Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 24-25 Premier League predictions. I'm so excited to be making this video. I've literally waited until the last minute. The season starts tomorrow, and I'm absolutely buzzing. This video might not even get out until after the United game, but I promise I've already locked in everything. We're all set, and man, I'm absolutely buzzing for this new season. It's very hard to predict this year. There are a lot of teams that could be finishing in interesting positions, but I'm going to have a crack and I'm going to have some hot takes. You might disagree with some of these opinions. I don't care because I'm just getting excited, giving my opinions, and it'll be interesting at the end of the season to look back on this and see how well I've done. If I sound a bit weird, it's because I'm fucking sick at the moment. My throat is killing me, but I'm going to attempt this the best I can. Let's get into it. I'm going to be doing the Premier League in terms of, league finishes for each team. I'm going to be doing some awards as well. And I'm also going to do the cups, predict who's going to win each cup, each domestic cup. The Community Shield games obviously already happened. City were able to take that one home. I did predict them to win it. I can say that. But yeah, super excited. Let's get into it. I'll stop rambling now. In 20th, rock bottom of the Premier League table, I've got Nottingham Forest. Look, it is a hot take because Forest are actually... They had a pretty good season. They were able to survive. But I reckon their time's come. They've been in the Premier League for a couple seasons now. Scraped by, obviously. The season before last season, they beat Arsenal in a shocking win to end our title hopes and keep them up. But now I think they're going to go down and I think they're going to finish dead last because whilst they do have some good quality players, Morgan Gibbs-White, I think he'll get like a £50 million move to another club by the end of the season because he is a very, very good player. Like, he's got a lot of quality, but it's just the rest of the team. I don't know if it's good enough. And I think Nuno Santo, honestly, I believe he'll be the first manager to get sacked. And then whoever they end up bringing in, I don't think they're going to be able to do much to really help their season. And I think they're just going to finish dead last. All right, next, 19th, it's Southampton. They're in a very similar situation as Forest, where I just don't think they're really going to put up a fight. I think they're going to go straight back down. They're a newly promoted team, which means that odds are their squad isn't the quality that it should be to be in the Premier League, and that is a fact. Their team isn't good enough. They haven't made enough improvements to their squad. I think Russell Martin, whilst he did a good job in the Championship getting them promoted through the playoffs, he's not ready for the Premier League. We've seen that he plays too ambitiously. Some of the tactics that he uses trying to play out from the back, it'll hit him hard. And I reckon Southampton, especially early in the season, will concede a lot of goals. And he might keep his job. They might stick by him. But yeah, I just don't think they'll do a very good job in the Premier League at all. I reckon they're going to go straight back down to the Championship. And yeah, I think them and Forest are both going to be very quick exits. They're not really going to put up a fight against the other teams. However, after 19th, I think the relegation battle is really going to be quite interesting. I reckon the last team that I have going down is going to really put up a fight, but I'll get into that with this next entry. Now for 18th, the last team I have going down, it's Ipswich Town. Look, they've probably got the worst squad out of every team in the Premier League. And it's understandable, right? A year ago, they were just promoted into the Championship from League One, and now they've done an excellent job to come up to the Premier League. Back-to-back promotions, especially from League One to the Premier League, is an insanely difficult task, and Kieran McKenna has done a brilliant job. And whilst I do think they will go down, I reckon they will put up a fight, because even though their squad is actually quite poor, I think Kieran McKenna is the right man for the job. It's brilliant that they kept him. There were a lot of teams in for him. Chelsea, being the big one, but they were able to hold on to him. And I reckon that just because of him, they are going to put up a massive fight. As I said, I do still think that they will go down. However, I honestly think that this Ipswich Town side is going to surprise a lot of people. They're going to get some very surprising results, especially at home. And whilst I do think they are going down, a lot of teams are going to be scared of them. A lot of the teams towards the bottom of the table are going to be very scared that Ipswich Town could potentially stay up and send another team down. So yeah, do definitely keep an eye out for Ipswich Town. I would not be surprised if they do stay up, but I barely have them going down, unfortunately. Would love to see them survive because it would be a brilliant story. In 3 years to go from League One to surviving in the Premier League, that's massive, huge for them. 17th position. Who is going to be the club that stays up with the skin of their teeth? Who's going to be the club that many people would have going down with a couple of weeks remaining, but they managed to scrape some points and survive? A lot of people might have an Everton, a Leicester, even Ipswich in this position, but I'm going to go with Brentford. Look, Brentford on paper should not be flirting with relegation. They have Ivan Toney, who is one of England's best strikers, had a good Euro campaign, got an assist, obviously had scored that penalty in the shootout. They've got Thomas Frank, who I actually really rate as a manager, and honestly, I think that if Brentford are this bad, I think that he could be lured elsewhere to maybe another Premier League job or a job abroad. But yeah, why do I have Brentford this low? Well, obviously they have Thomas Frank and Toney. They have some other good players like Flecken. He had a good season as Brentford's number one keeper since they lost David Ray to Arsenal last summer. It was only a loan, but now it's a permanent deal. They had Mbeumo. They do have some other decent players, but their squad is nowhere near good enough, and they don't play good football. We saw them drop too many points last season, and I do think that even though Ivan Toney is back, this is not a happy Ivan Toney. He's showed that he wants to leave, and I don't think that's good for club morale. His contract is over at the end of the season, and so if they don't manage to move him off the books before the transfer deadline, then they will have an upset Ivan Toney who's leaving at the end of the season. That's not going to go well. And they have signed, they did sign a replacement striker, which all but proved that Ivan Toney was going to leave. Eagle or something. I completely forgot his name. But then he got injured. He's out for like 3 months. He tore his meniscus, which means Ivan Toney's not going anywhere until maybe the January transfer window. And if they can get rid of him in January, then they will be an even worse side, because obviously that is a massive downgrade. So yeah, I don't think Brentford have the squad. I think that without Ivan Toney at his full, firing on all cylinders, we do also have to remember he spent a lot of last season away due to the betting stuff. So yeah, I just don't think it'll be a good season for Brentford. I think that they will flirt with relegation, but they will manage to stay up. And yeah, I honestly see Thomas Frank not getting sacked, but trying to find another job. Because yeah, this Brentford side, I think they have had a good tenure in the Premier League since they got promoted. They had that season a couple of years ago where they were able to finish, upper mid-table. But yeah, this is going to be a rough one for the Bees. I believe that 16th will be the highest team in the league that are in a relegation battle. I reckon the team above 16th, so 15 and above, will all be pretty safe from relegation when we get to the later weeks this season. So I think there'll be three, and as I said, Southampton and Forest will be gone early. So I reckon there'll be 3 teams that are competing for 2 survival spots, if that makes sense. So who will that last team be? 16th, I reckon it'll be Leicester City. Look, Leicester are an interesting one. I reckon they'll actually be good. I do think that they will have a decent season, which sounds weird because I said they'll be in a relegation battle. But they're a newly promoted side that really should not have been relegated when they were. They're probably one of the best relegation teams I've ever seen. They got relegated with Tillmans, Maddison. They had some very good players in that squad. And it makes sense considering they won an FA Cup 4 years ago, and they won a Premier League 8 years ago. So pretty shocking that we're talking about a team that won the Premier League within the last 10 years. It's won 2 proper trophies in the last decade. And we're talking about a team that has just been promoted. But anyway, they've lost their manager in Enzo Maresca. They lost a very good player for them last season in Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, both to Chelsea. And look, I do actually think Leicester are pretty good. I've seen a lot of people putting them rock bottom or something like this, and a lot of it does have to do with the points deduction that they're facing. I'm just assuming that it'll be normal because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. Obviously, that could affect how their season goes, but I reckon they'll finish 15th. They will be threatened by relegation. They'll end up surviving. And I think it's because they still have a good enough team. I don't rate Maresca as a manager. I really don't. I feel like that the team should have been better without, I feel like they should have done better last season. They won the league barely. It took them until the last couple of weeks to actually win the league. And I think their squad is too good. They've still got some great players. I just think that with Steve Cooper as their manager, they're going to have a decent season. I rate Steve Cooper. I think he's actually good. He's had some jobs where he hasn't done well. But I back him to do well with this Leicester City team. I'm quite optimistic. And even though 16th is quite low, for a newly promoted team that a lot of people have had in the bottom 2 spots, I've seen people put Ipswich above them, I reckon they'll do well and they will survive relatively decently. In 15th, we have Everton. They still have looming FFP charges. I'm just going to forget about all that for this. That's why I'm not putting Man City dead last. But look, Everton did such a good job to hold on to Branthwaite. I think that he is a star. He had such a good season for them. And whilst Everton do not have the greatest squad ever, if you look at their squad, it isn't amazing. Losing Amadou Onana is very unfortunate because he was huge for Everton. And it's weird because whilst they finished quite close to the relegation zone, that was because of FFP. If it wasn't for those charges, I think they finished 12th. So this actually I actually do have them slightly decreasing as a team. And it makes sense because they've lost arguably their best player. But even though their squad isn't amazing, they have Sean Dyche. And as long as Sean Dyche is at the helm, they're not going down. You just can't put them down if Sean Dyche is their manager. I just think he's so good at these kinds of jobs. He plays such good football. And you're going to see Everton nick some huge results at home. We saw them do it last season where they were able to beat Newcastle. What other good results did they have? I can't even remember. But they did have some good results. Even the season before, I remember they beat us at Goodison Park. This was the first time in a long time that we didn't lose there. Fucking hell. But yeah, I just really do rate him as a manager, and the fact that they held on to Jarrad Branthwaite is good. And yeah, I don't think they're really going to be threatened by relegation much at all. There's also the added thing of this is their last season at Goodison Park. It's their last season before they get their new stadium. And I feel like they're going to want to show the fans something, something to give them hope for the future, because They're moving into this new stadium. Now, the last time that these fans are going to go to home games. And I think they're going to be rewarded. They're going to be shown good football. And it's going to be a brilliant send-off to such an iconic stadium. So yeah, I think Everton are going to do quite well. And whilst a lot of people have had them quite low, I've also seen many, many people agree with me or even have them like mid-table. I think that's a little bit much. I don't think they're going to be like 11th or something like that where people have them. Wouldn't be surprised because they finished 12th, and a lot of people, including myself, had them finishing like bottom 2 last season. I was not optimistic about them at all. Whereas now I am. I believe in Sean Dyche, and I think Everton will do quite well. We've thought they were going to go down so many times, and they've silenced us every single time. They keep staying up. So why even predict them to go down anymore? You just know it's not going to happen. 14th to 11th is so difficult. It took me so fucking long to figure out how I wanted to rank those 4 teams. That mid-table, so unpredictable. They've lost, all those teams have lost some key players or gained a couple of players that it's just so unpredictable. But I've decided on 14th, Brighton. Look, Brighton have had a good couple of years in the Premier League. Last season was not as good as the season before because obviously finishing 6th and getting European football is massive for a club like Brighton. But they do the same formula every season. They develop these players and sell them for insane profits. Haven't seen it as much this year because they didn't really have many players that did break out, and the ones that did, they're actually able to hold on to them. However, 2 massive losses for them are the reason that I've put them this low. The first is obviously Roberto De Zerbi. I mean, losing him is massive. He was doing such a good job at Brighton. He was. I mean, he has been the one that's kept them this well. I know that they had Graham Potter a couple of years ago, then he went to Chelsea, and since De Zerbi have come in, he's been able to get them a European finish. He's been able to get them record sales. You know, he's done everything that has made Brighton who they are. You know, he has created that identity. And look, I do think that this new guy, Fabian Herzler, sorry if I'm butchering that name, it is a very ambitious appointment. The 31-year-old from Germany, the youngest manager in Premier League history. And he's definitely good for the future. I can see some potential there, but I don't think it will work straight away. I don't think if Brighton managed to stay in the Premier League, which as shown here, I think they will, as long as they stay in the Premier League, his job is pretty safe. He's 31. They're not exactly hiring him for change now, but that's been Brighton's whole thing. Develop youth and sell them off. So why not do the same thing with a manager? Bring in a young manager and hope that he can develop into something something good for the club. I think he could be there for an extended period of time if it's able to work out decently quickly. They can wait. Because it's not like they're strapped for cash. They make so much profit with these players, and I think the same thing could happen. And as for their squad, they still do have a pretty nice squad. They've still got Adingra, they've still got Matoma, they've still got Lewis Dunk. I think Verbruggen is a brilliant keeper. He should be their main number 1. But the other departure is Pascal Gross. For years, he has been the most underrated player in the Premier League. His ability to create chances, to even act as a playmaker, it's huge for them. And losing him is going to be very detrimental. Obviously, he's gone to Borussia Dortmund, and De Zerbi went to Marseille. But yeah, I just think that those 2 losses are going to bring them down in the table. But I have a lot of hope for the future. I reckon they're going to start off quite poorly. They're going to be around 15th, 16th early in the season. But I think they're then going to find form and eventually move up the table. I do think that's how it is going to go for Brighton. And yeah, whilst I'm not very optimistic for this season, I do think that they can be good in the future. In 13th, I've got Wolves. Wolves are just honestly very boring to predict. Like, They haven't really made any massive signings. I think Gary O'Neill is a quality manager. He did a very good job last season getting a team that a lot of people thought would be close to relegation, maybe even go down. And he managed to get them a mid-table finish in the Premier League, which was a very good job for him. He also got them to an FA Cup quarter-final. And Wolves were on the receiving end of some very controversial VAR decisions. I think they were the most robbed team in the Premier League. And he made his thoughts very clear on that. He spoke about it a lot. So yeah, I do think Wolves will be 13th. It's a very mid-finish. They're one of those teams that they've established themselves as a Premier League club, but you don't really see them making any pushes for Europe. Like, there are some clubs that could maybe do it, but Wolves are not one of those teams. They've got enough good players. They did lose Pedro Neto, which honestly isn't as big a loss as people are saying. He's very injury prone. His output wasn't all there, but he's still a very talented player, and they are going to miss him. But yeah, if they can spend that money well, either before the end of the transfer window or in January, we could see them go further up in the table. But at the moment, I've just got them 13th. I don't really see them doing too much. But then again, they're not going to fall off at all. 12th position. I'm going to go with Bournemouth. Now, this is actually a worse finish than last season because Bournemouth shocked everyone. I thought Bournemouth were going to go down. I honestly did. I thought that getting rid of Gary O'Neill was such a stupid decision. A guy that kept them up, replacing him with an unproven Spanish manager. I didn't think that was the right decision. But boy, oh my God, was I wrong. They cooked. They did. Iraola was arguably manager of the season. He did such a good job with this Bournemouth squad. Dominic Solanke was a revelation. He scored 18 goals in the Premier League. Did such a good job at Bournemouth. And that's why I have them finishing lower. Because they did get rid of him. They lost him to Spurs. And I do think that is going to be unfortunate for them. Now, they did replace him with the Sporting striker. I cannot remember his name. But they just signed that striker from Sporting. There were rumours that they could sign Eddie Nketiah for Arsenal. That's not going to happen now. But yeah, I do still think they will do a good job. Even though they've lost Dominic Solanke, I still do think that they will have a decent season in the Premier League. I don't think relegation will really threaten them just because of Iraola. Like, he did such a good job at Bournemouth. And I don't think losing Solanke is going to completely ruin their chances in the Premier League. I don't see how losing one striker will do that. As good as Solanke is, I just think that this Bournemouth side is too good at the moment. They proved it. They've proven how good they can be as a side, and I reckon that I've got hopes that they can continue doing this. Even though I have them finishing a bit lower, obviously losing their main man will impact their season, but not as much as many other people might think. So yeah, Bournemouth 12th. That's where I've got them. Now, this is the last of those mid-table teams that I feel like are all pretty much at the same level. I wouldn't be surprised if this team finishes 14th, and then Brighton, who I had 14th, ends up finishing 11th. But the team I've got is Fulham. I'm actually quite bullish on Fulham. They do have a decent squad. I know that there are all the jokes that the squad is full of just washed up players that no one wants anymore. And I do kind of understand, Willian and Iwobi and players like that aren't really as good, but they do have a nice little squad. If you look at some of the players in their team, they are quality. Robinson had an excellent season. He is one of the best left backs in the league. He had such a good year at Fulham. I think Bernd Leno is still a top keeper. He's still one of the best, 7 or 8 goalkeepers in the Premier League. He is. I honestly think he's better now than he ever was at Arsenal, to be completely honest, watching him at Fulham. But Marco Silva is a good manager too. Like, it's not only they've got some quality players, Muniz as well. He won Player of the Month in the league, didn't he? Like in March or something. But Marco Silva, I think he is a quality manager. He did a good job a couple of years ago getting them like 10th or something in the 22-23 season. This season wasn't as good. They were very inconsistent. Like, they put in some really good performances, beating West Ham and Forest 5-0, beating Arsenal at Craven Cottage. We didn't beat them. Them and Aston Villa were the only two teams that we didn't beat. That's insane. But then they also had some pretty poor games as well, getting destroyed by City at home in a game that I needed them to get something off City so we could have won the league. But yeah, I think Smith Rowe is going to be a huge signing for them too. Like, call me biased, but I actually rate him. I think that he could do a very good job at Fulham. If he actually gets the necessary game time, which is what he was massively lacking at Arsenal over the last couple of years, if he's able to find get enough time in the squad and find some form, because I honestly think he's probably in their best team. If that's able to happen, then I have very high hopes for him because he's still a young guy. He's still like 24. So yeah, I think that Fulham will be a very dangerous team. Whilst they're not going to be as consistent as at the teams above them, they're going to take some big points off some good teams. They're going to cause a lot of upsets like they did last season. But I also think that they will find a little bit more consistency with these new signings. And yeah, I think that they will finish 11th in the Premier League, which is like an upper mid-table type finish. It's almost into the top half. So yeah, I honestly think it's a good season for Fulham because they're a club that's been in the Prem a couple of years now. So yeah, 11th, I think that's a good season for Fulham, and I do think that that's what's going to happen. Into the top half, in 10th position, I have Crystal Palace. They are a very weird team to predict. The way they ended last season was absolutely phenomenal. For a huge chunk of last season, things were looking very bad. Obviously, in January, when Arsenal beat them 5-0 at the Emirates, that was probably the worst it got. All the fans were showing how much they hated the board, and then Roy Hodgson got sacked. And bringing in Glasner was the best decision I've seen a Premier League club make in how long? Because he completely transformed that team. Whilst Eze and Elise were carrying that team for most of the season, Glasner got them playing good football. He completely unlocked Mateta. Mateta had an outstanding end to the season. He was literally putting up Thierry Henry numbers in the last couple of months of the season. I saw some tweet that he was in an all-time stat with Thierry Henry for French players scoring in the Prem, which is unbelievable. We're talking about Mateta. And then he went on and had an insanely good Olympics. But the one problem with Palace is that they lost Michael Elise. And it still looks like they could potentially lose Marc Guéhi. I don't think they will because there are teams that pretty much everyone that might be interested in him don't value him as much as Palace do. Palace want a pretty penny for him, and I think they should get it because Guéhi was honestly England's best defender at the Euros. And Palace deserve a lot of money for him. So yeah, losing Michael Elise is tough, but I don't see Eze going anywhere this year. This could be maybe his last year at Palace, I don't know. Marc Guéhi is probably going to stay. And even without them, they still have a very good squad. Like Tyreek Mitchell is a very good left back. As I mentioned, Mateta. They have some good players in this team. Henderson and Johnston as their two goalkeepers as well. And yeah, I think that the sky's the limit for this Palace team. I have them 10th just because of losing Michael Elise. But if they go on and prove something, have a big season, potentially fight for Europe. It could happen. I wouldn't be too surprised. I'm going to be a bit conservative. I don't want to have them too high, just in case they don't do as well. The other reason I do have them 10th is I think they're going to focus on a cup run. I reckon this Palace team could make like a semi-final of the Carabao Cup, or maybe potentially try and get to Wembley in the FA Cup, or do something big in the Cups. I reckon it's because I think Ole Glasner, he's such an ambitious manager. He doesn't only care about the league. Obviously, a couple of years ago, he won the Europa League with Frankfurt. Like, he's not just going to prioritize getting a high league finish, because even though I said it could happen, it's going to be very difficult for Palace to get European football with a league finish. It's going to be very difficult for them to finish top 7, maybe top 6, depending on who wins the Cups. And I honestly think that he will make a run for one of these Cups. Maybe not win it, but he'll try as hard as he can to maybe reach a semi-final in one of these competitions, or potentially take home the silverware. So yeah, Palace fans, you should be very excited. A year ago, I would not have said that, because they were not looking good. But even without Michael Olise, this Palace team is going to be very ambitious, and they've got a lot of shit to look forward to this season. I think they're going to do splendidly. I think they're going to do very well. This is going to rattle so many people. I've already said it to some of my friends who support this club, who I think is going to finish 9th. Not very happy. I'm going with Chelsea in 9th. Now, considering that they have spent over £1 billion in the last couple of years, they should not be 9th. But this Chelsea team, I could genuinely spend a whole video talking about why I think Chelsea will finish 9th, but I'm going to keep it as fast as possible. Chelsea are not a team. They are a collection of players. I think Chelsea's books have hit 50 players. They've got like 7 or 8 goalkeepers. And that's just not a good formula if you want to get top 4. Like, I understand having a big squad can be good in a way. It means that they're not really going to worry about depth problems. But the players aren't good enough. They've spent all this money and as their squad, their team hasn't even gotten better. Like, if you take a look at Chelsea's transfer history this summer, they have made the most signings out of any club. It's insane. But they brought in nothing but mediocre players. Like, their top marquee signing was Pedro Neto. And the club has already had so many injury problems, and they want to bring in Pedro Neto for £60 million. Like, he's a talented player, but he cannot stay fit. And I see Chelsea fans saying if they bring in Victor Osimhen, they're winning the league. Even if they bring in Victor Osimhen, they're not going to do much at all. They could finish in a European spot. I still don't think that team is top 4 quality. And I think the management situation, what Chelsea have done, what Todd Bowley has done. Last season, Chelsea were horrendous for most of this season. Mauricio Pochettino was doing such a poor job at this Chelsea side. They were being carried by Cole Palmer. But then in the last 10 or so games, it was starting to change. Chelsea were starting to find some form. Instead of bringing in a new squad every single week, they were starting to have a proper team. Enzo Fernandez got injured. Him and Caicedo were not working well. And then the double pivot of Caicedo and Gallagher had a very good season was incredible. They were starting to play very good football at the end of the season. But what did they do? They completely tore it all up. Todd Bowley went and sacked Pochettino. He kept him when all the fans were calling for him to go, saying, trust the process, just wait. And then finally, the fans were thinking, okay, I see the direction. This could be good. We might get top 4 next season. And towards the end of last season, I was thinking, this Chelsea side is looking good. You know, next season, they might actually be in the top 4. What do? They sack him. They sack him now that he's finally finding form. And it would have made sense if they were trying to bring in like Hansi Flick. If they already had Hansi Flick fully agreed, I rate Hansi Flick very highly. I think Barca are going to have a good season. If they had not just Hansi Flick, maybe Thiago Motta, one of the top managers, Xabi Alonso, If they had one of these top managers already done, secured, then maybe. But they brought in Enzo Maresca, who barely won the league with Leicester, who had easily the best squad in the championship. I mean, they literally downgraded their manager. Their team is worse. I was just talking about Gallagher and Caicedo being a top double pivot. They tried to sell Gallagher. Now that deal fell through. But imagine what that does to team morale. Imagine what that does. You tried to sell the guy that captains your team for most of the season because Reece James can't stay on the pitch. I saw people saying, Reece James is going to have a fit season. He's done his hamstring already. Honestly, Chelsea fans, you guys keep saying he's the best right back in the world. You should lose hope and sell him because this guy, his time at the club should be done. What else? Why else will they be shit? I just want to say Cole Palmer is a star. He's an absolute superstar player. The reason they're not going to get relegated is because of him. And for some reason he just signed a 9-year deal. So you've got a lot of misery to look forward to. But yeah, this Chelsea team, it is a joke. Their squad has not even improved at all. Honestly, it hasn't. They've made some decent acquisitions, but I don't see how their best team has gotten better. The other one, Chalobah. There were talks that Chalobah was going to get sold. He wasn't included in their preseason tour. He was their best defender in the last 2 months of the season. Anyway, I hate Chelsea, so this is making me very happy to say. And I hope I'm right, because fuck Chelsea. But oh my god, this team is going to be dreadful. I could see Enzo Maresca getting sacked. I honestly could, because I don't think he'll do a very good job at the team at all. I know preseason isn't the best way to judge them, but they were shocking in preseason, losing 4-1 to Celtic. Fuck me. Defensively, they've looked honking. Absolutely honking. And look, they do have some attacking quality. I think Christopher Nkunku, if he can stay fit, will do well. As I mentioned, Cole Palmer. And bringing in a striker like Osimhen would help. But they've just spent too much fucking money and not improved their team enough. Under Todd Bowley, Chelsea spent more money than Everton have in their whole history. Everton, who are a historic club that have won league titles. Absolutely shocking. I'm going to stop because I've been yapping on about Chelsea for 6 minutes. I got to finish this video. But yeah, Chelsea 9th. They are going to be atrocious. Wow. Fuck my hair. West Ham. Oh my god. I have them 8th. And you can't deny it. Look, before this summer, I honestly thought that they would be closer to relegation than Europe. Because losing David Moyes is huge. As much as West Ham fans love to say that it was his time to go and we're trying to take steps forward, he's everything that club has ever done in their history. He's everything. But man, their summer's been huge. Look, I still doubt if Lopetegui, I still don't know if he plays great football. But this team, Füllkrug, I know he's not a great European striker, but he'll do well at West Ham. Somerville from Leeds, absolute baller. Todibo, Juventus wanted him. All the biggest clubs in Europe wanted Todibo, and he signed with the West Ham. Fuck me. This West Ham team is stacked. They signed so many good players. I mean, these signings, Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well. They don't need him to form these, overlapping runs. I don't need him to be Trent. So all they'll care about is the fact that he's one of the best one-on-one defenders in the world. Honestly, Wan-Bissaka is so class. So yeah, this West Ham team is going to do very well. They're going to be a scary team to face. Their squad's gotten better. Whilst their manager, I still don't trust him. But their team, the improvements that they've made, I don't like West Ham very much at all. But at least you just have to respect it. And I know a lot of people would have them higher than me. I still think this is a good season for them. I'm not saying they're going to underachieve. Because honestly, having them in the top 4 or whatever, they're acting like David Moyes is still here. He's not. I feel because the manager does matter. And also, I think that the teams above them are all going to be decent. So, yeah. Big up to West Ham. They had an excellent summer, and I think they're going to have an excellent season. West Ham fans, you have a lot to be excited for. 7th, I have Newcastle. Can everyone chill? Like, fuck me. People have been talking so much about Newcastle. They've been either saying, oh, Newcastle don't have European football. We're going to see what we saw a couple years ago. They're going to finish in the top 4. Or people have West Ham insanely low, saying Eddie Howe will be sacked by December. Newcastle, I feel, are going to be 6th or 7th. Around there. I've got them 7th. Look, they've got some great players, obviously. Bruno G. Alexander Isak is a baller. I want him so bad at my club. Eddie Howe, I've got mixed feelings about him. He doesn't play brilliant football, which is why I don't think they'll really be up there. And look, as good as their squad is, I feel like 7th is a very standard position to put them, because they're clearly better than all the teams below them, but then I don't know if they've got enough to really challenge the top 6. Like, all the teams above them have been making moves, improving their squad, or they're just much better. So I feel like it would take a couple of moves for West Ham to potentially break into that top 6. But they obviously don't have the FFP to do that. I mean, there were talks that they'd have to sell players. They haven't done that. When are they going to sell these players? I don't know. But yeah, look, I could see them doing well because of no European football. But yeah, I still rate all the teams above them higher. And I just don't think they'll have enough to really push further up the table. I know it's a really boring explanation, but yeah, I think they're going to have a very similar season with less injury struggles. Obviously, they were riddled with injury, so that could be another reason to show that they should be higher. But also, I feel like they've been found out a lot. A couple of years ago, where they finished in the top 4, they were playing a very defensive style of football. Eddie Howe isn't ambitious enough, and if you're going to finish in the top 5, top 6, or wherever, if you're going to try and get back into the Champions League, maybe, they need to play more attacking. And maybe it's because of the personnel. Maybe it's because of the injuries that they did have. But I need to see some better football played by this West Ham team. I need to see Eddie Howe do a bit more. Yeah, I don't have strong views on West Ham like all these other people do. I just think that they will be one of the teams in the battle for Europe, but they just don't have enough quality to compete with these other teams. It's very simple. Yeah, now moving on to the top 6, which I think is a pretty decent jump from Newcastle. But I do think that there could be some changes there. I'm not too sure. We'll have to see. 6th place. I'll stand up for this one. 6th place is going to be Manchester United. Yeah. Fuck me. I don't see the hype at all. I'm not buying it for a second. United fans have been running their mouth all fucking summer. All summer. Look at our window. We signed Xerxes, Yoro, De Ligt, Mazraoui. What's your club done? We're going to be incredible. No, you're not. The FA Cup final is the reason I think United will have a shocking season. And do you want me to explain why? Because everyone has forgotten how shocking they were for the entire season. I don't know if you United fans get it. You suck. Ten Hag plays the shittest football I've ever seen in my entire life. That Palace game, where you lost 4-0. 4-0. There were other games too. They got away with so many lucky points because of that attacking quality. They finished 8th in the league. The only reason they got European football was because they won that cup final. Imagine if United had no European football. The biggest club in England, not even in Europe. And yes, they beat City. They won a trophy. But does that change the course of your season? Does that change the trajectory of your club? No. Whilst I don't think they should have sacked Ten Hag because you can't sack him after winning a trophy, honestly, that has just put the board in a terrible position because he should be sacked. He's not the right man for the job. And he'll prove it this season. I guarantee they've invested all this money, bought all those Ajax players. Think about how many players he's bought from Ajax, how many players he's wanted that he got. Anthony, how'd that go? Martinez, he had a good season, but he's been very injury prone. Onana, how did that go? Now De Ligt and Mazraoui. They've spent all of this money on players that Ten Hag wanted. And they haven't really gotten anywhere with it. Yes, they've won silverware, but in terms of the football, it's not been good. Let's analyze this because we've obviously got a lot to talk about with them. They needed attacking quality. They needed quality everywhere. They do have some good attackers that have kind of been carrying them. Like Bruno Fernandes is their only remotely world-class player. Garnacho as well had a good season. Rashford, honking. Did you guys see him in that Community Shield game? All season, he was terrible. Their solution was to bring in Joshua Zirkzee. He's not even an improvement on Højlund. They're both like the same player, just strikers that did okay in like decent Serie A clubs. How does that get you top 4? And the defense, like De Ligt and Mazraoui. I think De Ligt is good. Like De Ligt, the injury struggles aren't actually as bad as people say. He isn't that injury prone. But they needed a 6, man. I know Kobe Mainoo was good, but you can't have just him. They needed to bring in a 6 because their midfield was getting absolutely torn apart. So until they bring in an elite 6, this team's doing nothing. I don't see them getting top 4. I just can't see it. They could even finish below Newcastle. I said Newcastle 6th or 7th. Potentially. I just don't rate them. I don't. And I think United fans will once again be calling for Ten Hag to get sacked during the season because the board has spent all this money and they will not get into the top 4. I will be extremely surprised if this Manchester United team finishes in the top 4. I just don't rate them. I just don't think that they're good enough. So yeah, moving on to the top 5. I personally think that the top 5 is untouchable. I don't think any of these teams are really going to get into the top 5. So United are going to be the best of the rest, honestly. I don't think they're going to be good enough. Now, as I just said, the top 5 is in a league of their own. So who am I picking to finish 5th and potentially miss out on European football? I know that the Premier League could receive a 5th UCL spot. But if they don't, who's going to be the team that will narrowly miss out? I think it'll be Aston Villa. I do. Look, they've had an okay window. They've brought in some decent players. I think Onana is a top signing. Samuel Elling Jr. is good. And they didn't really lose anyone big except for Douglas Luiz. And I think that's the issue. When your marquee signing is replacing your best player or your second best player, depending on if you think it's him or Watkins, if your marquee signing of Amadou Onana is a not as good replacement of Douglas Luiz, I just can't see that team improving. Because Douglas Luiz was either their best or second best player. Him and Ollie Watkins were their 2 best players. And Onana, he's good, but he's not better than Luiz. He's not better. And he is the best player that they've brought in. I do think that they are going to play some good football. I think that Unai Emery is an excellent manager. He was one of the best last year. But they have not done enough in the summer to really warrant another top 4 finish. I could see it. I could see a world where like a Tottenham bottle it or Liverpool don't do as good under Arne Slot. I can see a world where Villa sneak in. But I think also the added bonus of playing Champions League football, they're not used to it. All these other clubs have done it. The clubs that they're competing with in Europe are all Big 6 teams. Literally every team in the Europa League or Champions League, which are the two proper European competitions. I don't count the Conference League. Even if we do include the Conference League, Villa are the only traditional Big Six club that are in Europe, and they're in the Champions League, a competition they haven't played in a long time. So because of that, I don't think they'll fall off or anything, like finish ninth like these people say they will. But I don't think they're going to finish in the top four. They're still a quality side. Ollie Watkins, I think, is going to be a smoky for the Golden Boot again. I had him winning it last year, which was actually a really good call because whilst obviously Haaland ended up winning it, it was more just the fact that I predicted him to be one of the best strikers in the league. And that came out of left field because a lot of people didn't have him being as good. Anyway, enough about that. He won the Playmaker Award, so we did end up winning some sort of award. But yes, Villa 5th. Do I think they'll compete for top 4? Yes. I just think that they will fall short in the long run. Now for the top 4, because I think it's pretty simple. 3rd and 4th, it was actually quite difficult for me to decide between these two clubs. And then obviously the title. You'll see what I have to say about the title. Okay, the lighting actually does look a bit better now. The team I have finishing 4th, taking that Champions League spot off Villa. I'm going to go with Tottenham. A lot of people have been disrespecting this Tottenham team. They've brought in Archie Gray and Dominic Solanke. Not a perfect window, but two players that will impact their squad. I genuinely think Archie Gray could become a consistent starter. They've also got Lucas Berggaard that they signed last January. This is a nice little team that they have. I feel like defensively they're going to improve. They were leaking a lot of goals. I think it's going to be a bit more steady if they have if Basuma improves from last season, because he was actually quite poor. If Bentancur can stay fit, I think he will do very well at this Tottenham side. And attacking wise, Dominic Solanke, he creates a lot of options for them because they've got Richarlison as well, who I actually rate. I think he'll have a good season if he can stay fit. Son is still Son. Brennan Johnson had an excellent season as well. I really do see this Tottenham side playing some good football and actually competing and getting a top 4 spot. They could even finish 3rd. Them and the team I had 3rd, which is probably obvious to most people, I thought about switching them. But I just realized how long this fucking video is. I am so sorry. I'm going to try and keep it as short and sweet as I can for the remainder of this. But yeah, Tottenham, I've got them 4th. They're going to be back in the Champions League. 3rd, I have Liverpool. I don't think they're going to be in a title race. Like we sort of saw a sort of a 3-way title race last season between Arsenal, City and Liverpool. Liverpool fell off towards the end, and on the final day it was just Arsenal and City. I don't think Liverpool will even be that good because I think both Arsenal and City are going to set a very high standard, and I don't think Liverpool will be able to keep up. And I think it could even potentially get worse. I could see a world where Tottenham end up finishing 3rd and Liverpool drop out of the top 4 entirely because they haven't made enough signings. They haven't signed anybody, and they might not sign anybody this summer. So whilst that is a huge problem, and Jurgen Klopp has obviously left, I just think that they're playing some beautiful football. I really think Arne Slot is going to do a good job at this Liverpool side, and I have them 3rd just because of what we saw last season. They've still got the players. They haven't really lost anyone. And whilst we could see their top players like Salah and Van Dijk fall off, I feel like this is going to be their last real good season. So if Liverpool don't make changes after this season, I think that is going to be when they start dipping down the table. But for their first season, I think they're going to do a good job. And I reckon they'll finish 3rd. Oh my god. This is a huge, huge take. I've seen a weirdly high amount of people doing it. But in 2nd, I've got Manchester City, which means that in 1st, I've got Arsenal. I'm going to be talking about both these teams together. Oh my god. This summer has been very weird. Arsenal haven't even really improved their squad massively. We brought in Calafiori, which I don't think he starts immediately. But City losing Julian Alvarez, that's huge. I mean, if you think about it logically, Arsenal were one win away from winning the Premier League title. We went to the final day against City, and City have lost Julian Alvarez, who played their most minutes in all competitions last season. He's a huge player for them. And yes, whilst I could definitely see a world where City go and win their 5th title in a row, they're still obviously the favourites. I just think that Arsenal are going to win this title. I have faith that we can do it. We've finished 2nd twice in a row. Surely this is the year that we get over the line. 5 in a row is absolutely insane. If City do that, the Premier League is absolutely cooked. But yeah, I've got Arsenal Football Club winning the Premier League and Manchester City finishing 2nd. And that concludes my table predictions. This video is like an hour long. Fuck me, I've been yapping about the Premier League table for an hour and I'm not even done yet. I have to talk about the cups. Jesus Christ. Now for the awards. This one's really interesting. For the Golden Boot, I'm going to pick Erling Haaland. I know it sounds so boring, but I genuinely can't see anyone nicking it off him. He got so much disrespect last season because he didn't score 30 goals. He scored 27 league goals and he was getting disrespected. People calling him washed. You have Roy Keane saying he's a League 2 striker. Amazing. But no, he is sorry, I'm fucking sick as a dog. Yeah, he's gonna have an unreal season. He is. I can just see it. When I saw him raw dog that flight, I knew it was all cooked. And if he can win City the league, fair play. Because that will be 3 league titles in 3 seasons at Man City. But yeah, I think he'll win the Golden Boot. I honestly think he could score 40 goals this season. He'll do better than he did the year that he got there. And I still don't think City are going to win the Premier League. Now for the Playmaker Award. Who is going to get the most assists? This one's very difficult. I could go for a City player, because if Haaland's going to score the most goals, it would make sense for a City player to get the most assists. Could go for an Arsenal player, because I've got us winning the league. But I'm going to go for a very interesting one. I'm going to go for Szoboszlai. I'm going to go for Dominik Szoboszlai. If Liverpool are as good as I have them, then they're going to need some attacking quality because their defense isn't going to be good enough. So if they are where I have them finishing, got it out eventually, then Szoboszlai is going to have to work wonders. And I think he will. I reckon Slot is going to use him correctly as a proper number 10. We saw it in pre-season and he had quite a good preseason from what I actually saw. So yeah, I'm going to have Dominik Szoboszlai winning the Playmaker Award. I loved the signing of him when Liverpool brought him in. He didn't have a good season last season, but I think he'll do well. Players that could compete, obviously Ollie Watkins is a shout because he won it last year. Players like Bukayo Saka, Kevin De Bruyne. Who else? Mo Salah's even another Liverpool player, but I feel like he would be more of a goal scorer. So yeah, those are players that could compete with Dominik Szoboszlai, but I think he will win it over all of them. Very hot take. Now I'll group these two together. Player of the season and young player of the season. I'll do them both in one segment because I think we've hit over an hour, which is unbelievable. I need to stop yapping. The player of the season, it would make sense to go with an Arsenal player since I have us winning the league. I'll give an alternative. If City win the league, I think Haaland will win player of the season because of how many goals I have him scoring. But since we are going to win the league, I think I'll have Martin Odegaard. People will put Saka, people will put Rice, people will put Saliba, but I'm putting Odegaard. He's just so good. I think he's our best player. He is our most, I'm not going to say underappreciated because everyone rates him. But I feel like by the end of the season, he will genuinely be in the upper echelon of midfielders, even if we don't win the league. Even if he hasn't really won anything, he still deserves to be up there. I genuinely think if we win the league, he will be like a top 5 midfielder in the world, and you won't be able to argue with it because he is just such a good fucking player. Now for young player of the season, I'm actually going to go with Archie Gray. I've really liked him at Leeds. He can play midfielder. He can play as a left back. He's a very versatile player, which means that Tottenham could use him quite a lot. For a player his age, he's not really a high-profile signing, but I do still think that Tottenham could utilise him quite a bit. And because of that, I've got him as the Young Player of the Season. Now, I think the Young Player of the Season as an award is very fucked. I think the way it should work is if, at the beginning of the season, if you were 22 or younger, then you can be eligible. Unless you've played an insane amount of minutes. I don't know exactly how it should be, but I feel like nominating players like Phil Foden and Saka. Foden has like 6 Premier League titles. How's he Young Player of the Season? Anyway, that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I've got Odegaard Player of the Season and Archie Gray Young Player of the Season. Now for the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. The 2 cups, who do I think are going to win? Just remembered I forgot to do the Golden Glove. I'll go with David Raya. If we win the league, he's pretty much guaranteed to win the Golden Glove with our defence. But the Cups. The Carabao Cup, I'm going to go for a very interesting one. I'm going to go for Aston Villa. I don't think they'll finish in the top 4, but I do think that they will make a run and potentially win the Carabao Cup. I predicted Chelsea to win it last season. They actually made the final. So if Aston Villa lose the final, then I might be cursed. So yeah, I'm going to go with Villa to win the Carabao Cup. Now, the FA Cup is an interesting one. Obviously, there are a lot of contenders to win it. Arsenal. I'm not going to pick Arsenal because I don't want to predict us to win the double. City potentially could win it. If not, then that means I have them going trophyless, except for potentially the Champions League, which I'm not going to talk about in this video because we're already over an hour. So I'm going to talk about it in a separate Champions League video. There's also Tottenham, but obviously not. So one thing that's very interesting, I know I've said that Liverpool's season could be very up and down, but I think they're going to win the FA Cup. I think third in an FA Cup would be one of the best seasons they could ask for. First year under a new manager. Plus they're back in the Champions League. I've got Liverpool overachieving. I think they'll do very well. But yeah, Liverpool to win the FA Cup. And that just about wraps up the video. I'm not going to make an outro. I've been yapping for way too long. Yeah. I'm going to do my match week 1 predictions now, just going through every game this weekend. I'll also do a more in-depth match preview for the Arsenal-Wolves game. But yes, my yapathon is over. Thank you for watching. Let's go, Gunners. Hopefully, I'm right. Hopefully we win the league.